Viviane Naimy, currently Dean of the Faculty of Business Administration and Economics at Notre Dame University. I'm not sure how I will moderate this beautiful session. It is a true honor to welcome you today to this exceptional, beautiful roundtable held here in the historic cloister of San Lorenzo home to ocean space in Venice. Our team, Modal, Tonal, Musical Tree, Neuroscience and Therapy, invites us to explore the deep roots, intricate branches, and vibrant life of musical traditions, a living tree that has nourished human emotion, cognition, and healing across centuries and cultures. The musical traditions of West Asia, North Africa, and medieval Europe share a profound common ground. An ancient modal melodic system, the trunk of the symbolic tree. From this trunk emerge countless branches, musical styles and forms shaped by linguistic prosody, ritual gestures, and cultural context. The 16th century Arabic treatise, The Tree, with the calyces bearing the essences of modes, beautifully captured this vision, later echoed Goethe's Erbpflanze, Schenker's Urstaz, and Chomsky's generative grammars, all drawing from the same mystical and organic archetype, the tree of life. Today, we will examine this musical tree through three complementary lenses: its modal grammar, its neurocognitive processing, and its therapeutic potentials. Each of our speakers, while coming from distinct fields, musicology, neuroscience, and music semiotics, will illuminate different aspects of the same great tree, its grammar, its brain pathways, its healing powers, and its deep inner life. I invite you now to embark with us on this fascinating, beautiful journey into the roots, branches, and fruits of music, where tradition, science, and therapy beautifully intertwine. Let's begin. We are first privileged to have Professor Nidaa Abou Mrad with us. Professor Abou Mrad is a leading figure in the field of musicological studies of modal traditions of West Asia. Holding both an MD and a PhD, he serves as a senior professor responsible for the music and health access at Collegium Musicae, at Sorbonne Université as well, the dean of the Faculty of Music and Musicology at University in Lebanon, and the scientific director of MaqamFestival. His groundbreaking theory of modal semiotics, awarded the National Center of Scientific Research Excellence Prize, offers a generative grammar for monodic traditions. As a violinist, composer, and scholar, his work bridges the analytical, the emotional, and the spiritual dimensions of modal music. Professor Abou Mrad will open the session by recapitulating the concept of the maqām tree of life, showing how modal music generates deep emotional states through its grammatical structures. He will explore how these emotional responses are processed in the brain and describe pioneering neuroimaging studies aimed at reconnecting contemporary music therapy with its ancient West Asian and Mediterranean origins. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Viviane Naimy. You are related to sustainability. You are working on sustainable economy in Lebanon and with Nobel Prize, Richard Roberts. So you are here, your presence is very legitimate, and you are Dean of the Year, so you are very proud.
I would like to relate what I said to the Princess, that we are humanizing our processes, and we are working on reducing poverty with renowned people. And thank you so much for hosting us today.
So sorry for my bad English. I am French educated and Arabic educated. I want to address my many thanks to you, Your Highness, Princess Mashal Shahlan, to inviting us to be part of this beautiful journey. And I'd like to address my thanks, many thanks to Dr. Abdelkader Damani. I don't know, he's still here, because the idea to link MaqamFestival with this Tales from the Earth, we spoke about that, and he really wanted to deeply link these two ways, two paths. Thank you very much, Ms. Dalia Rashad, to create MaqamFestival and to facilitate everything to be part of this journey. Many thanks to my dear friends and colleagues from Sorbonne University, Professor Nicolas Meeùs and Professor Paolo Bartolomeo, to be part of this round table, and to Viviane to moderate us. I want only to speak about this modal music, to explain a little bit what is modal music, what are modes and maqām. Dr. Abdelkader said that it is very easy to speak with triptychs and with the three elements. So in music in the world, we have notes which are combined pitch and duration. And there is, for pitch, it's the melodical component, and there in the world we have three main tongues in music, three systems, which are the monodic modal music, the pentatonic monodic music, and the tonal polyphonic music. So we have differentiation, but we have something which is common to these three tongues, three systems. I'm speaking now about the modal music. We speak about mode. So a mode or a maqām is we can recognize a mode through 4 points, through 4 points. The first one is the scale. The scale, so it is an alphabet, a melodic alphabet, that is used to compose or improvise a work in this mode. The second thing is main notes, the main pitches. We have a final, we have a tenor, we have qarar. And the third is about melodic models. So we have a kind of way to formulate music in this mode. And the fourth point is about ethos, which is the signification, the whole signification of a piece, the whole content, inhalt, that Professor Meeùs will speak about after this. And it is about emotion. So I'll show you how one mode is constructed with my volume.
Let me hold the microphone for you.
There we have a scale. We have and we have a final. For instance, or this. So with this, this is thus. but another final. Another final for this scale. And you can have, so first scale, second point, main or final pitches, and now melody. For instance, in Rust. Another mode, Bayati. Mode 6. So it is our, so the 3 points, the scale, thank you, the scale, the main pitches, the chord, and melodic typical formulations. And now ethos. In this tradition, in the tradition of West Asia, we have, it is very important, ethos for every mode. But here, it is, we can listen to 3 modes, and I ask you if you can compare the ethos of these 4 modes from which one is more systolic, so qabdi, so which is sad, than other which is diastolic, which is joyful. So this one. This one, compared with this one. And this one. So would you place this on the top 10 or top 3 of systolic or diastolic? Diastolic or systolic? More joyful or more, and this one? Sad. For Western listening, and for Eastern one, it is the same, I think. It is the same, and in between, okay? So it is related to the scale, to the intervals, and the placement of the final. And it is, we can try this. We made a lot of experimentations with these 3 modes in Lebanon and in France. A PhD student who made this experimentation with French listeners, and it was the same. This is systolic, this is more diastolic, and this one is hesychastic. So the scale and the placement of the final determines the ethos, the global ethos of a piece, from several traditions. This is a part. So when we spoke with Dr. Abdelkader about how we can link the tales from the earth and the library, the tree library, with music, with Arabic music, we have the tree of moods, the tree of maqām. So a tree has a trunk and branches. And so this is a trunk. This is the trunk. Branch. Trunk. I can change the branch. the trunk, and branch, another branch, the same trunk. This is how we conceive, since several centuries, a relation between nature and music, the tree, and we have several treatises about several manuscripts about grammar music, the grammar of modal music, which speaks about tree, construction of the tree. So we have a main trunk for all the modes and several branches, modal branches. This is a point. And the other point is about how to use these modes for healing. Music therapy, we have treatises in, we have several stories about musicians in hospital, Maristan, in the Arabic world, who used to play or to sing music with maqāms to patients, to this mode, to this pathology, this other mode to this pathology. So we have rust for hemiplegia. And so it is interesting. We can perhaps say it is too metaphoric or too, perhaps it is an illusion. But with the system of ethos, I think it is interesting to explore this. So now we are trying to work about the neuroscientific substrate of this ethos, and also about the tension and stress and distress with music. Here, for instance, we have in this mode Mrad. And if I emphasize this, it's perhaps stressing because we wait this one. Wait. And after we wait for the resolution. Okay? So it's like in the theory of Leonard Meyer, tension and détente. And now it is possible to work on this. We are starting a research in Lebanon. Yes, I'm finishing. About in which places in the brain, we have the system of, perhaps Professor Paolo Bartolomeo will speak about that better than me, but we have the system of reward and pleasure, which is dependent on dopamine, a neurotransmitter, and music acts in these places. For instance, for the waiting, where we are waiting, there is a tension. It activates the striatum. In the striatum, there is something which is noyau codé, and when there is a resolution where it is pleasure, it activates the nucleus accumbens. And when we have thrills like ecstasy of tarab, it is accentuation in nucleus accumbens, and we can visualize it through the neuroimaging, the functional neuroimaging, so with MRI, a functional MRI. So we are working on this with these modes to see how these modes activate this part or this part in the brain. And with these works, we can afterwards think about implementation of this in music therapy, a modal music therapy. We speak now in the modern music therapy about functional or sedative music therapy. And this music therapy is related perhaps to this ancient process that what was described in these manuscripts in the Arabic world about modal music therapy, maqām therapy. So we'll try to work on this, and perhaps we'll keep you updated about that.
Thank you, Professor. I can assure you that our intuition confirms that the music has an incredible impact on our therapy, be it the psychological one or be it our diseases. We are honored now to welcome Professor Nicolas Meeùs, one of the most respected voices in contemporary music theory and musical semiotics. Professor Meeùs, a PhD and HDR, served as director of the music faculty at Sorbonne Université and was editor-in-chief of the journal Musicae. As a former director of the Brussels Museum of Musical Instruments and a distinguished researcher in organology, Schenkerian analysis and musical theory, he has profoundly shaped how we understand the inner meaning of music across traditions and centuries. Professor Meeùs will guide us to the structural roots of musical meaning, explaining the notions of introversive and extroversive musical semiosis. Drawing from Jacobson, Hegel, and Hanslick and Schenker, he will show how musical meaning can grow organically from internal relationships within music itself, forming a deep, living structure beneath the surface narratives. The floor is yours.
So, I will mainly speak about musical signification and particularly about what Jacobson says, the difference he makes between introversive and extroversive semiosis. Jacobson describes introversive semiosis as a message which signifies itself, indissolubly linked with the aesthetic function of science systems. And I think aesthetic should not yet be understood as artistic. It's merely perceived. This aesthesis. So this is introversive semiosis, a message which signifies itself. Extroversive semiosis, Jacobson defines or characterizes by its referential component. It's the fact that it refers to something else. So he clearly defines two types of signification that easily apply to music. The one intrinsic, consisting in reciprocal relations between elements in the music, for instance, motives, and the other, the extrinsic meaning, a meaning that refers to the world. 19th and 20th century German philosophers and musicians, mainly Hegel, Hanslick, and Schenker, call Inhalt, content, the intrinsic meaning of music. Schenker in particular describes the intrinsic musical signification as organically growing from the Ursatz, the primal structure. Organically growing, this is extremely important. This could be the subject of another meeting. What is organicism? It is the idea that a musical form, a musical work, develops in the way a living organism develops, an organism in general. That is to say, it has a structure which is a seed, and from this it develops until it reaches its full form. This is very different from the usual way of describing a form. One says that there is part 1, and then part 2, and then part 3, and then part 4, and so on. Schenker describes music as being organic. In the 20th century, the International Project on Musical Signification, founded by Eero Tarasti, is more concerned with extroversive semiosis. This international project often reduces the signification of music to a narrative, to the story that the music tells, and the music is supposed to tell a story. At times it even forcefully rejects any signification that would not be of the order of musical narrativity. I won't argue about that. Anyway, these two types of musical signification, intrinsic and extrinsic, are discussed in books by Kofi Agavou, who's a black American music theorist born in Ghana, and who brought, for instance, Playing with Signs or Music as Discourse. And Agavou considers that both intrinsic and extrinsic music usually are present together in music. Now, I wonder, because my colleagues here will want to speak about emotion, I wonder whether emotion is not a third type of meaning. Is it intrinsic or extrinsic? We'll discuss that. I should begin, well, it's time that I begin. I should begin with recalling what semiotics or semiology is, the science of signs, from the Greek semeion, sign. Modern semioticians apparently decided that we should prefer the term semiotics to semiology. And so I will keep to that term. This decision was taken, I think, in an international meeting on semiotics. The idea behind musical semiotics is that a music is a sign, or that it produces signs. Semiosis, the term used by Jacobson, is the semiotic process, the signifying process, how signs are produced and how, if there are to be signs of something else, how they refer to that something. One known case of semiotics, of course, is medical symptoms, which may be considered signs of a disease. This is one of the earliest uses of the term. Ferdinand de Saussure, who was at the origin of modern semiotics, described signs as combining a signifier and a signified. We usually more often consider that the sign is the signifier, and that the signified is its signification. Saussure considered that we should not call a sign if it has no signification. Saussure at first spoke only of linguistic semiotics, of linguistic signification, but then called for a generalization of semiotics, opening it to other sign systems, possibly including music. And this is since known as general semiotics. Linguists at times claim that signification, especially in the case of non-linguistic systems, reduces to what can be expressed or what can be translated into verbal language. IReMus in particular, IReMus, who wrote with Cortes a dictionary of the theory of language, considers, I quote, that all other semiotics can be translated in natural language, while the contrary is not true. You cannot translate what you say into music. So says IReMus. I'm not entirely sure of that. He continues, on the other hand, natural languages form the basis, both by their signifier and their signified, of the construction of other semiotics. So it has been claimed that verbal semiotics is the model of all semiotic systems, but verbal language, because it necessarily refers to reality, may be too particular to be the model of other semiotic systems. And I argued elsewhere that music may be a better model for semiotic at last, for a truly general semiotics. I mean that if semiotic systems always had to refer to the real world, then neither music nor any other type of expression, mainly artistic expressions, might truly be semiotic. In other words, if one is to accept the idea of a general semiotics, then one may have to conclude that the semiotic of verbal language should not and could not be its model. Some semioticians propose to make a distinction between meaning, French sens, in German Sinn, and signification, French the same word, signification, and the German Bedeutung. The first, meaning, would belong to semiotic systems in general, including music, and the second, signification, would be proper to verbal language. So I'll leave these questions for later. Let's turn back to Jacobson. What further says, introversive semiosis dominates not only music, but also glossolalia poetry and non-representational painting and sculpture, where each element exists only in function of the rest. Diversely built and ranked parallelisms of structure, he says, enable the interpreter of any immediately perceived musical signifier to infer and anticipate a further corresponding constituent and the coherent ensemble of these constituents. Precisely this interconnection, Jacobson still says, of this interconnection of parts, as well as their integration in a compositional works, in a compositional wall, act as the proper musical signified. Jacobson obviously sees music as the main case of introversive semiosis, to which he had glossolalia poetry and non-representational painting and sculpture. That is, forms of art often described as abstract. Glossolalia could be defined as the vocalizing of speech-like syllables lacking any comprehensible meaning. That is, having meaning but no signification. If we accept the distinction between meaning, Sinn, and signification, Bedeutung. Musical meaning, Jacobson says, resides in an interconnection of parts, a correspondence between constituents of the music perceived. Understanding such a meaning obviously must be of the order of music analysis. Music analysis, explicit or implicit. I mean, you can understand without having to write an analysis. But Schenker makes this particularly clear, stressing the importance of repetition as the technique by which music makes itself free from language, from verbal language. He explains, and I quote him, a melodic movement fully independent from verbal language, in order to make itself in any way understandable, must present itself more than once to the hearing and to the sensation. Because a musical motive, contrarily to the verbal word, does not possess the advantage of representing by itself objects or concepts. If the word always is the sign of something, the musical motive only is the sign of itself. And that was written in the late 19th century, which is very early for that. In this, Schenker develops the idea of, the German idea of Inhalt, the content of music, which Hegel described as, I quote, the meaning of notes and of their harmonic relations and their melodic animation. Hans Lick in his famous book on the musically beautiful, wrote that music consists in series of notes in sound shapes that have no other content than themselves. And Schenker, in later writings in the 20th century, describes musical motives, that is, repeated musical fragments, as musical words, Tonwörter, so the equivalent in music of words in verbal language. The important point in this is repetition, which indeed is crucial not only within a given musical composition, but also intertextually, for instance, between works from a given period or a given style, so the repetition from one work to another. Musical repetition needs not be exact, of course. It may concern one single aspect, for instance, the same melody, the same succession of pitches on different rhythms, or the same rhythms the same rhythm on different melodies. It may include a level of variation, repeating a melodic contour, going up, going down, on faster or slower rhythms, or larger or narrower intervals. The only important aspect is that the repetition be perceived as being a repetition. The importance of repetition in music does not concern Western tonal music exclusively, which was Schenker's and his German predecessors' only concern, Western tonal music. But repetition comes close to being a universal of music. If any universal exists in music, there could be a music that does not belong to this description. But repetition, that the melody, repetition is essential, that the melody belongs to this or that mode or this or that maqām, often is recognized on the basis of the fact that it repeats formulas that can be found in other melodies of the same mode, of the same maqām. Harold Powers, the American specialist of worldwide modality, describes two types of modes. One characterized by its scale, succession of notes in the music, and the other by melodic types or melodic formulas. Powers considers that medieval modal music was mainly a matter of scale, but that is true only in the way theorists and medieval theorists described their music, but obviously they were aware of melodic formulas, and maqām theory, which may indeed have laid more stress on musical types, nevertheless also often describe scales. Emotions then, do emotions belong to that? Is the ethos inherent in a mode? Is it intrinsically linked to it, or is it rather dependent on culture or usage? This has been discussed since antiquity, since Plato and Aristotle, and has not been solved. Let's agree that emotions arise at least partly from listeners and are not fully inscribed in the music itself. I have examples, military music being in D major for reasons that have nothing to do with D major, but only with the building of wind instruments. Or music with three flats in the signature. If you don't even know what it is if you don't read music, but you can hear it. You don't hear the three flats, but the three flats, because in the 18th century, it was the sign of Freemasonry, or possibly also of the Christian Trinity. So, asking a question to my colleagues, is not repetition mainly what may have a therapeutic effect on music? The fact is that one usually knows the music when it's listening to from before. So there is something soothing in this, the fact that it is repeated. once again, what do you think of the importance of repetition?
Thank you, Professor Meeùs. Just you can change our places. Yes. So our third speaker, Professor Paolo Bartolomeo, brings the clinical and neurological dimension to our discussion. Professor Bartolomeo is a renowned neurologist and neuroscientist leading the Picnic Lab at the Paris Brain Institute. With an MD and PhD, he has made major contributions to understanding attention, perception, and mental imagery, particularly in patients with brain injuries. His multidisciplinary work combines advanced neuroimaging, neurostimulation, and cognitive assessment, illuminating how consciousness and recovery emerge from the brain's intricate networks. At the same time, he plays a harpsichord. Professor Bartolomeo will take us to the medical branches of the tree, presenting how music, by engaging B-hemispheric brain activity, may promote recovery after stroke. He will also introduce rehabilitation protocols using music to restore cognitive function and preliminary results that suggest music's extraordinary potential to help reconnect a brain disrupted by injury. The floor is yours.
Many thanks, Professor Naimy. I would like to thank Professor Abou Mrad and the organizers, especially Princess Al-Shalam, for their kind invitation. So as you can gather from my name, I work in Paris, France, but I'm Italian. I was born and raised in Italy, so it is for me a great emotion to be here in Venice talking about music, thinking that also that Venice has been this connection point between the East and the West. Even in musical history, I can only remember, I'm not a musicologist, of course, I'm not a specialist, but when Claudio Monteverdi was called here as a maestro di cappella in San Marco, he really shaped the history of Western music, even also using Eastern and codes sometimes. So, why music-assisted rehabilitation? So first of all, as a neurologist, let me remind you that we speak of nature here. We have this natural organ, which is called the brain, in our head. And unfortunately, bad things can happen to the brain. For example, strokes, when the blood doesn't arrive to a given region, may disrupt brain processes, especially by disconnecting regions from another. A key process for our cognitive functioning based on the brain is that regions in the brain must speak to one another. Isolated regions do not work. And one of the negative consequences of vascular strokes in the brain is disconnecting regions from one another. Now, how can we reconnect these brain regions? Of course, if there is an anatomical lesion, we cannot physically reconnect them. We cannot put cables where cables have been severed, unfortunately, not yet. However, in the brain there are many kinds of connections, and we can anatomical connections in several regions, in several areas, locations of the brain. So we could try and use byways to reconnect regions or networks which were disconnected by a stroke. And several of my colleagues think that music, for example, listening to music, also making music, but it's for the moment it's more feasible to have patients listen to music, could be a good candidate. Why? Because we know from neuroimaging, for example, from neuroscience, that just listening to music activates several brain systems in a coordinated way across the two hemispheres. So there is basically, we can say that three systems are mainly active during music listening. One is the perceptual system. Of course, the sounds arrive to our brain and they activate huge networks in the brain, in both hemispheres, especially in the right hemisphere, the non-speaking hemisphere of the brain. When sounds arrive to the acoustic primary area in the temporal lobe of the right hemisphere, they are interpreted in the sense that sounds are put together in melodies. This is what enables us to follow melodies, especially this right hemisphere-based putting together synthesis of different sounds in melodies. The language networks of the left hemisphere, on the other hand, they are also activated by music. There is some debate right now in the literature. Some say language has nothing to do with music, but we know that especially the rhythmic patterns in music do activate left hemisphere-based perceptual system. A second system, which is activated by music, is the motor system. You know that what the Anglo-Saxons called groove. When we listen to an interesting rhythm, we have this pleasant sensation and motor activity following the rhythm, if the rhythm is interesting enough. So the motor system, we know it is activated not only overtly, like in dance or groove, but also covertly. When subjects are absolutely motionless in the fMRI machine, we see the motor system activity when subjects listen to music. So this is the second system. Again, bilateral and coordinated activity between the hemispheres. Then the third system is the one Professor Abou Mrad was referring to, the emotional system, which is called in the brain the limbic circuit. And it involves this deep nuclei Professor Abou Mrad was referring to. For example, this nucleus called the nucleus accumbens, which is a region which activates when we feel pleasure in general, be it food-related pleasure, as here in Venice have been experiencing in the last few days, sexual pleasure, or even pleasure listening to music. In a very nice neuroimaging study, the Zatorre group in Canada showed that activity in this nucleus was proportional to what subjects wanted to spend, to the money, the amount of money subjects wanted to spend to buy music. He had subjects listening to clips, different musical clips. He gave them some money to buy the clips they preferred, and the amount of money they spent was proportional to the activity, directly related to the activity in the nucleus accumbens in the right hemisphere. Once again, the non-speaking hemisphere of our brain. Now, what does all this mean for rehabilitation? There is the hope that intensive listening to music can engage this bilateral system in the brain and somehow help the non-lesioned hemisphere in stroke patient to compensate for cognitive deficits induced by the stroke. And now in the Salpêtrière hospital, we are developing a project based on these concepts, and we have just very preliminary evidence on a few patients. So these protocols are very complicated to to build, because you cannot just have patients listen to music and then see if they go better or not. You need a control experiment. So as a control experiment, we are using listening to audiobooks, so an activity not involving music, but involving at least the acoustic aspects of perception. We cannot, since there is some evidence, some preliminary evidence in the literature that music can indeed help compensating cognitive deficits after stroke, we cannot have a control patient group doing not listening to music and an experimental group listening to music, also for ethical reasons, because we know that music can do some good to patients. So a way to solve this problem is to use what people working on rehabilitation call the crossover paradigm. Which means that we put patients randomly into two groups. One group listens to music for 2 weeks, and then it receives the control procedures, the audiobooks. The other group does the opposite. It starts with 2 weeks of audiobooks and then passes to the experimental procedures. And evaluations, which are both behavioral to assess cognitive deficits, neuropsychological evaluations, and neuroimaging evaluations are made at the beginning of the protocol, at crossover, and at the end of the protocol. So we can establish whether music has or not an effect on the cognitive deficits. And so we have very preliminary results right now on a few patients with aphasia after a language disorder after left hemisphere strokes, we show some improvement, not dramatic, but statistically significant and perhaps clinically significant improvement in a few patients. And more importantly, neuroimaging shows that this improvement does seem to be correlated with an improvement of connectivity within the spared hemisphere, the non-lesioned hemisphere, the right hemisphere in the case of these patients. So, of course, these data have to be confirmed with more patients, and this is what we are trying to do right now. Thank you very much for your attention.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. This is so inspiring. I leave the floor for questions in case... Yes, the one in the back.
Yes, the choice of music, this is a very relevant question, and something we have been discussing with the colleagues here. The few studies in the literature on this topic use music, the music preferred by the patient, which is logical, but not scientifically completely acceptable, because you don't have the same material given to all patients, and this can be a confound in interpreting the results. So we chose to use to impose some music to patients. We had, of course, we had to choose one repertoire. And the repertoire we chose finally is the first Vienna school, Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven. Why? Because, well, it is, as the colleague was saying, an important feature in music is expecting events. So you recognize repeated events, like you were saying, and you are surprised by unexpected events. And to be, for music to be pleasant, for the experience to be rewarding, you need a good balance between expected events and surprising events. If you have too many expected events, it becomes boring. If you have too many surprises, like in 20th century avant-garde music, it becomes incomprehensible, I mean, people do not understand what happens. And some musicologists say that this repertoire, Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven, have a kind of are in a kind of sweet spot, ideal balance between expected and unexpected events, for reasons that we could discuss more in detail, but just to motivate our choice. And I must say that from the empirical point of view, we have been rewarded for our choice because patients, even patients who had no musical training at all, greatly enjoyed the music we gave them.
I wanted only to confirm what you said, because exactly these three masters for the means which were at the epoch, of Mozart, Haydn and Beethoven, from the modern listener, also from the point of view of modern listener, are at the same time, let's say, common because it's tonality, major, minor, and so. And at the same time, they are not masters for nothing. Yes.
Sorry, say it again.
They are not masters for nothing. I mean, yes, because they were able, with the means they had, tonica, subdominante, dominante, and so on, always to furnish a surprise. No, so to my mind, it was a very good choice.
Thank you very much.
I have a friend who's an artist, ukulele master, a woodcut master. He has a large plant that was sick, and he was slightly sad, so he had decided to play music. And it felt better over time. So I want to ask, is it possible to listen to vibration, sound, music, to healing, but without the ears?
There is already a bone-mediated transmission of sound to the brain. So it must not necessarily pass through the ears. Of course, it's not the same, it's not as precise as what we get through our acoustic system, but it can do something, yes.
Well, I had another question, but before that, there's actually the sea gypsies in Southeast Asia. They put an oar in the water and put the end of the word to the skull, and they listen to the fish through the skull reverberation. So there is this mode of listening, but so in the connecting to your therapy, in fact, music and words are not totally disconnected. So they're connected through songs, and in fact, many cultures encapsulate words into songs because they are better captured. The Quran was written to be recited, to be sung, but also in the Australian Aborigines, they have very long songs that are about 8 hours long that encapsulate 40,000 years of history, and they're engraved in a song so that they cannot be altered. So it seems to me like songs might be better to connect the non-verbal and verbal connection, because a music that comes with a well-recognized lyric must force the verbal hemisphere into trying to come with the words.
I absolutely agree, and there is a group actually working on the same topics, a Finnish group, and they are using vocal music, and they claim that it is better than instrumental music, which we are using. It can be so. However, this would introduce a scientific confound, because if you find an effect, then you don't know whether the effect depends on the words or it depends on the music. So we prefer to use, for the moment, instrumental music.
I would have a question about that. If you use vocal music, is it because the words are understood? Does one have to hear vocal music in a language that one knows? Schoenberg once said that he was very surprised after listening to a lied by Schubert, that he never wondered what the text said. And that, in fact, he had no idea of what the text said, but he thought that to have understood everything. So,
absolutely, no, this is a very relevant question, but an open one, because nobody knows if you really need, from the therapeutic point of view, therapy, music-assisted therapy, if you need to understand the words or not. Then, absolutely.
We have Dr. Professor Abdelkader.
It is important to think about this. We have two systems of languages as faculties to express or to communicate through sounds, through organized sounds. The verbal one, the verbal language, and the musical language. It's two languages which are different. They use the same acoustical space, acoustical material, but they are related to two systems. One uses acoustic with the frequency or the frequency parameter with the timbre for the verbal language, and the music uses the pitch from frequency to create signs. So signs with timbre and signs with pitch. So we have two languages and two systems in the brain also, which are differentiated. It's not the same localization, not the same regions, not the same network, but their intersections between those. When we speak about rhythm, metrics, temporal parameters, it can be the same place, but when we speak about pitches or timbre, it is differentiated. So when we are speaking about experimenting music with neuroscience or about music therapy, it is very important to work on to separate these two functions or two capacities or two languages. It is very important to do not mix and to not have false results. So yes, we have the introversive significations, which can induce emotions. The signification is not emotion, but it induces emotion in the musical language. And in the verbal language, you have significations which are referential, which are related to a lexic, and it is more extroversive, I think, or introversive in another way. So it is important to separate and to understand that this separation is very important epistemologically, methodologically, and after, if we mix with song, it's interesting to know which parameter is acting in this. So, and there is another question. In the verbal language, we have several tongues, several systems, but we have a common grammar, like Chomsky spoke about universal grammar. There is a common and principal grammar which is common to all the tongues, all the natural language, and there is a specific grammar. So we have a common part and specific or differentiated grammar. In music, in the musical language, we have also, by hypothesis, something which is common to all the tongues, to all the system, which is in monodic modal, the monodic pentatonic, and the tonal or the polyphonic tonal music. So we have something which is common, and we have a lot of specificities. I'm not speaking about universals. I am speaking of the cablage, the cable, the neuroscientific substrate of this grammar. And it is interesting to say that, to find that in all of the musics in the world, we have something which is common in the grammar and common also in the neuroscientific network. So about ethos, something which is like major and minor in Western music, or what I showed, and you found that there is here in Rust, it is joyful, Saba is sad. So there is something which is common, and also for waiting and resolution, for so tension and resolution, there is some processes which are common. So it is interesting to work about that. There is something which is analogous to the Vienna school in maqām music, which is about music which is pleasurable in the surface and which is very constructed and very complex in the deep structures. So Mozart is a great example of Mozart music, and we have something which is analogous in maqām tradition, or perhaps in Chinese tradition. So it is important to discriminate which is about verbal language, which is about musical language, which is about the deep structures, the grammar, the profound, the common, and also which is about the differentiations between all of these systems or traditions, and to work when we know what are the common things and the different things. Sorry for...
there is a room for one question, or two questions maximum. So we will end with Dr. Abdelkader.
Sorry. Hi.
Okay.
Thank you so much, first of all. I was curious to ask how it would affect the experiment if, instead of having the same repertoire for all the patients, touching back on also the previous conversation, if we used more traditional music, maybe touching back on the repetition and the nostalgia, that therapeutic sense, how it would affect the experiments?
This is a good question, a good point. The problem is that the answer is extremely difficult because, as I was saying before, building such protocols is very complex. And I did not say, but there is also a problem in recruiting patients because you need patients with chronic deficits, so you have to test them twice before they start the experiment just to see whether their deficits are stable, because otherwise there could be spontaneous recovery or whatever. So there are many questions, such as the one that you ask, which we cannot respond for the moment. We are just starting.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, because I don't know how you let the patient listen to the music, how long for a day, I don't know.
Sure.
But I just have a question about what is happening on the other time they spend during the day. So do you pay attention to the sound environment of the hospital, for example? That will be much more time than the time they spend for listening to music.
Yeah, so of course these are important questions. Our patients actually do not only listen to music, but watch musical videos performed by leading interpreters with historical instruments and everything, for 2 hours a day during 2 weeks, except the weekends. And so it's really the minimum time which is considered minimum rehabilitation dose, which is considered as potentially effective. 2 weeks. Why? It would be better if it were a month, but we actually have patients hospitalized. So for practical reasons, it is impossible to have them for more than a month, because the other 2 weeks they'll have to perform the control experiment, listening to audiobooks, so that they have to stay there. And about the environment, I don't know about the sound environment of the hospital. It's not very agreeable, as usually. The only thing I can say is that it is the same in the experimental condition and in the control condition, so it shouldn't affect the results too much.
Dr. Abdelkader, you have...
Thank you so much for this, in fact, starting question, because the conclusion is that all the questions are open now and we have no answer, which is good for all of us, that we don't have an answer right now. But what we are sure is that, and I really appreciated this discussion, that we have the same roots about music everywhere, and the way that you split the word universalism going to another concept, which is where things are rooted, then better than where things are projected or developed, the roots or so. And this is very important in our day, to rethink the question of the filiation. That becomes for us more important than the obsession of the future. And I'm keen to say that let's stop buying the future as it is something that doesn't exist yet. So it's very stupid to buy something that doesn't exist. Let's buy something that exists already, which is the filiation. And this is what I really appreciated from your talk and your explication. So now we are going to have a break of 1 hour. So to lunch, etc., and we will come back to our discussion at 2:30. And if you want to really experiment the music in the church, it's at 7 p.m. Come to enjoy 4,000 years of music, of modal music, 4,000 years of modal music, as a trip around the Mediterranean in this beautiful church, led by Professor Nidaa Abou Mrad here and Multaqa al-Musiqa al-Maqamiyya. Thank you so much.